I always joke that I spent the first 35 years of my life knowing everything, and so I was bound and damn determined to spend the next 35 years actually learning something about somebody. But I don't know if any of you have had that experience in life, but I don't know where it was along the line, but somewhere along the line I realized, you know what? If we'll just shut up once in a while and ask people questions and listen to what they have to say and open our minds to different possibilities, it's amazing what we actually might figure out. It's amazing what we actually might learn. And so Abe said, Mike, come and talk about just life. Come and talk about how to live a complete, worthwhile, meaningful, living de vida loca kind of life. How do we do that? And I've thought so much about that, and I think it comes naturally to me. I've always been a little hyper. I've always been a little manic. I've had way more energy than I know what to do with since I was a little kid. When I got my law degree, I started practicing law. I started doing litigation work, and I just quickly realized fighting like this for a living and living my life through billing in hours in 0.6 and 6 minute increments is going to kill me. There is no way I'm going to do this. I've got to figure something out. I've got to go on a journey and figure this out. So I ended up coming to work for the realtors, and the realtors were really great and said, hey, go practice law too on the side, be our CEO and go have a law practice. And so about 20 years ago, I started a law firm doing legislative lobbying work. And so I do government advocacy and lobbying work. And I remember I think I had the realtors and I had one other client. And I said, well, I have a law degree, which means I can pretend like I actually know something about something. But I also have a client, which means I can call myself a lobbyist, right? That's all you need, really, is a client. And so we started on this little trip, and it's just grown and grown and grown beyond our wildest imaginations. And so it's been a really fun journey to be on. I represent clients now in Utah like Apple, Uber, Comcast, Dominion, Natural Gas. I represent all the major home builders, all the biggest land developers, everybody pretty much having anything to do with real estate. We do government affairs for them. I represent a couple huge hospital chains, pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline, really big international companies. And the cool part about that is sometimes I get to be in meetings with, not only am I in meetings with really impressive elected officials, there is such a thing, by the way, as impressive elected officials in a positive way, trust me. But I get to be in meetings sometimes with Tim Cook from Apple came to town. I'm going to show you a picture of him in just a minute. But he came to town, and I was in a meeting with him, and I just thought, if these guys only knew how dumb I really was, I do not belong in here, but it's just given me it's given me so many cool opportunities to learn from really some of the best, smartest, coolest, brightest, biggest thinkers of our time, and I've cherished it for that. So anyway, I started thinking about living a complete life or living a full life, and I decided I might do a presentation Abe Shreve style, which means a whole lot of freelance, right? A whole lot of freewheeling. And so it was actually really fun for me. Here's what I did. I'm not going to lie. This isn't scientific. I didn't go back and look through years of notes and all my favorite books that I've ever read and make a list of the most profound reasons or the most profound things to living a full life. All I did was I opened up my phone and I started going through pictures. And I was like, what have these pictures as a recording, journal, history of my life, what have they taught me? What have they taught me about what we can do or can't do? That's all I did. So I'm just going to go through some of these pictures with you guys and show some of them to you and kind of talk to you about maybe some lessons that I've learned along the way, either doing things the right way or usually probably doing things the wrong way. But I've hired coaches for everything. I love mentoring. I love coaching. I've coached. I've hired coaches. I just hired Abe. Abe made the mistake of coming to the gym with me in the morning 2 days ago, and it turned into about a 2-hour coaching session for me. And said, "I need your help, Abe. You got to come help coach me through this situation that I'm going through right now in my career." And here's what I've learned: the best coaches, the best mentors, the ones that have really left a long-lasting impact on me are ones that figure out, Mike, you came to me and you hired me for X, and I'm going to help you with X. But you know what? For you to really solve problem X, what about Y? What about Z? And you don't know it, but really your problem is A, D, and F. And you haven't figured that out yet, but when you do, you're going to realize that these are connected. And they help me with areas and aspects of my life that I had no idea was causing this interconnection and either stifling my growth or getting in my way. And those are really the best ones. And then also, I'm just going to throw this out to you. I have found from my own experience, although I can sometimes compartmentalize, there are times where temporarily I can be going through a really hard time in certain aspects of my life, and I can still find a way to compartmentalize and give to my clients sometimes, temporarily. But long term, if my life is out of whack, if my life is out of balance, if I'm not achieving and growing and developing and working on various aspects, I find it really hard to give to my clients or my kids or my friends or anybody else that comes to me that might need something. It's hard. And so I think as we get our own lives together, we're able to coach and mentor and help other people do that, and then we're able to help find profound insights in their lives. So I'm gonna show you guys some pictures, and we're just gonna talk about these for just a minute. So I just turned 50 years old. I know I don't look anywhere near like I'm 50. I know, you don't need to say it. But I turned 50 a few weeks ago, and a number of... Are you 50? I'm 50. It's no picnic, is it? You see what I've been whining about. But 30 years ago, I was a Mormon missionary in Africa for 2 years in South Africa. And about 5 years ago, my wife said, "Hey, you're almost 50. I said, "Like hell I am. I'm 45, I'm not even close to being 50. She said, "What do you want to do when you turn 50? Like, what do you want to do? And I said, "There's only one thing. I want to go to Africa. I haven't been back in 30 years, and I want to go to South Africa, and I want to take you so that I can show you all of the million stories that I've been telling you since we've known each other. I want to show those things to you." So we started saving and planning for a trip back to Africa. And I was like, if we're going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I don't want to go for a week. I want to go for a while, and I want to spend time. And there's things I want to see that I didn't get to see when I was there when I was 19 years old. And there's things I want to show you, areas I want to go back to and stuff I want to experience. So we planned this trip. We saved for it, we planned it. And this was the thing where, when you're on the treadmill and you're exhausted and you're in pain, you're like, I got to think about something to distract me. For 5 years, I would think about my trip with my wife to Africa. When I was in the shower, and I'd think about my trip to Africa and going with my wife. And then life happened. COVID happened. And, I have 4 kids. 2 of them are still living at home. They're teenagers. They're in high school. They're busy. I have lots of clients with lots of urgent needs right now, and we started looking at this and we were like, we can think of 218 reasons off the top of our heads why we should not go on this trip. It is not a good time, and we should probably not do this. And to go be gone for 17 days right now in a third world and fourth world situation, it's probably not smart. And we canceled the trip for about 2 days. And after 2 days, I went back to my wife and I'm like, we're doing this. I don't care. I have to go do it. We've got to go do this because life is short and life is fragile. So we just went to Africa. We started out in Cape Town. This is us on top of the famous Table Mountain in Cape Town. I'm just going to show you some pictures, then I'm going to get to a point here in just a minute. There's the cable cars you can see riding up. Do you know they have penguin colonies in Cape Town, South Africa? Have you seen on Netflix the show My Octopus Teacher? It was filmed right here at this beach, by the way. This is where that guy did all that. And if you haven't watched it, go home tonight and watch it. It's really cool, huh? Yeah. And it's a dude like skin diving. I woke my 15-year-old son up at 1 in the morning after I watched I was like, get up. You got to come watch this with me. The poor kid. I made him get up at 1 in the morning to watch My Octopus Teacher. But it was filmed right here. That is Nelson Mandela's jail cell on Robben Island off of Cape Town. Do you know that Nelson Mandela was in prison for a total of 27 years before he was finally released? Blacks were given the vote, and he was elected the first black president of South Africa. And he spent 21 years of his life in that jail cell, this very cell, sleeping on that very mat right there every night for 21 years. That's where he lived. And I just have to tell you, when we went to see this, he's a hero of mine. I've read every word that's ever been written about him. One time, one of my kids was writing a paper on Nelson Mandela, and they were bummed because they wanted to go skiing. It was like a powder day, and they wanted to go skiing. It was a Saturday, and their paper was due on Monday. I said, go ski, and let me just work on this here for a second. You go ski, and then you come home and you can finish it. I swear, I'm not joking. He came home 8 hours later. I had written a 21-page paper on Nelson Mandela. And he was like, Dad, I don't think it's right for me to turn that in. And I said, bull crap. I want to get a grade on this. This is awesome. Anyway, I love Nelson Mandela. But I just have to tell you, when we went to this jail cell, there was a woman in front of me, and I could hear her speaking Zulu. And so I knew she was a black South African woman, and she was just kind of right in front of me on our tour. And it's really narrow, and there's just kind of room for one person at a time. And so she was in front of me, and she walked up to that cell. She grabbed hold of the bars of the jail cell like this, and she just started sobbing, started crying, and she sank to her knees and just cried and looked in here. And she looked up at me because I was in line, and I was just trying to back away and give her a minute. And she looked up at me, she's like, I'm so sorry. I said, everything changed because of what happened in there. Everything changed because that guy was willing to sacrifice what he was willing to sacrifice. And she said, my kids own a home. My kids vote because of this. And anyway, it was a life-changing moment it was so cool. And my wife and I woke up, we love Table Mountain so much, we woke up in the middle of the night and we hiked up to the top at 3 in the morning so we could watch the sunrise. Sometimes you just do something, you have no idea what to expect. Sometimes it sucks, sometimes it's a disappointment. Look at this. It was one of the most beautiful things we had ever seen. We sat up there. Okay, so now one of the things that we wanted to do, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about, is I spent a lot of time working in apartheid era. We called them black townships. So during apartheid, white people made all black people live in these little townships. And the biggest one of these is called Soweto. And Soweto is an area that's geographically roughly the size of the greater Ogden area. There are 5.5 million people that they know of that live inside of Soweto. There's really more like 8 million. But there's this many that they know of, and so many of them live in these little shacks, in these shanties. And so my wife and I just parked our car and we went into Soweto. And I just wanted to go meet people and talk to them and speak Zulu again and speak Afrikaans and just show my wife. And I mean, she is fearless. No tourist in their right mind would ever just go walk around this. But we did. And see all these beautiful little kids here? 5 kids, that's their house. 5 kids and 2 parents live in that little shack right there. This is a woman we met. This room is big enough for 3 beds. There are 11 people that live in that room. And we met her and spoke to her for a minute. And that's my wife, just loving her. She was so this is another example of their living conditions. That's a preschool. And these are just, that's their house kind of behind them right there. And these are just some other kids and other people that we met. That's their little shack right there. This was their only water source for a few miles. They have these every 5 miles. They come here and they get water and they haul it back. They don't have bathrooms. They don't have anything. So they do their laundry and whatever right there. This is the inside of one of the families that we just met randomly while we were there. This is their place and all these little kids. Can you imagine that? They all live in that little shack. And then here's what I wanted to tell you. So we were standing there talking and it was a mixture of English and Zulu and whatever else we could speak to communicate. And my wife was asking this woman right here, she's like, do you work? And the woman said, yeah. And she said, are you married? And she said, no, I'm not. And my wife said, who watches your little babies? She had been playing with them and she's like, who watches your little babies when you go to work? How do you do that? And this woman started to try to answer her in English and didn't know how to do it. And so she looked at me. I speak pretty good Zulu. And she looked at me and in Zulu, she just said, like, she's kind of like this, like, can you help me translate? And she said, Ubuntu, Ubuntu. And let me tell you, and then I turned to my wife and I was like, I have to translate Ubuntu. Let me try to translate that for you. In Zulu, there's a philosophy of life that they live by, kind of an ethos or a creed that they all go by. And they call it Ubuntu. And if I'm translating that into English, it means I am because you are. You are because I am, and we are together. And it's this amazing philosophy of life that if you're in a rough spot, I'm in a rough spot. If you're not doing well, I'm not doing well. But if you're doing okay, I'm doing okay. And the better you're doing, the better I'm doing. That we're all interconnected in this really amazing sense. And so she looked at me and she's like, Ubuntu. And so I looked at my wife and I was like, and I was thinking, how do I translate that? And I didn't have time to go into the explanation and I didn't have time to think through it. And so I just said, they take care of each other. And then she said, yeah, like sometimes I go to work and sometimes this woman over here comes and watches my kids. And sometimes there's a guy over here who's handicapped and so he can't work, so he comes and watches my kids. And sometimes they walk a mile across the township to their relative's house, but we take care of each other. And we are because of each other are. And I thought, you want to talk about one word that sums up how to live a full, complete, awesome, incredible, meaningful life? Ubuntu. U-B-U-N-T-U. Ubuntu. You want to see somebody who's figured out how to live a pretty awesome life? Check out this guy. Is that the best picture you've ever seen? He actually had a little tiny makeshift art studio and he was producing art. We bought like 3 pieces of his art because we just loved it. But I thought, that's a guy right there. You can just tell from his picture, he has figured it out, man. He doesn't need much. I bet he doesn't own anything other than those clothes and some paintbrushes and stuff. He probably doesn't, I'm certain he doesn't own any of the things that we would value in terms of ownership. But I thought, and so I took this picture and framed it and put it next to a framed piece of his art because to me, that means as much as his art. Look at that guy. He is living his best life for sure. Here's the next thing I wanted to talk to you about for just a second, and the next principle. I started looking back at pictures. My life is at its best when I figure out where my limits are in anything and I push myself to those limits and then I figure out a way to push past those limits. For me, that's the most important thing, right? And that is true in business. And I grew up raised by a single mom. We were really poor. We didn't have anything. And my expectations for myself were so small. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, one day, if I could earn like $50,000 and if I can just have this, I'd be, I'll consider my life just perfect and successful because I just had these limited expectations of myself in everything. And then as I got older, I started to realize, oh, it turns out I can actually do stuff. Or I can do things I had no idea I could do. And so I just wanted to give you just one quick example of that for me. And because this has been a really, really hard thing, physically, spiritually, mentally, and in every way. But a number of years ago, I ran a marathon and enjoyed that process and finished it and did it. And then I was kind of like, okay, I did that. Like what's next? And so one of my friends said, well, you should do an Ironman. I said, okay, that seems like the next step in the evolution. And so I trained and I did it and I completed the Ironman. I was like, okay, I got that done. And then I finished and I was like, what's next? And at the time I had a friend who's a realtor here in Ogden who was doing bodybuilding competitions. And I asked him, I'm like, what are your thoughts? I need something. I need a goal. I need something. He goes, dude, you should try a bodybuilding competition. And I naively thought, well, how hard can that be? Like that can't be that hard. And it turns out it's really, really hard. And I remember when I went in and I thought I was pretty fit. I was pretty active. I was pretty fit. I went in, I hired a coach. He measured me and he was like, well, I have good news and I have bad news. And I said, okay, what is it? He goes, the good news is, Mike, you're at like 10% body fat. That's really good, especially for an old guy, like that's awesome. And I'm like, okay, what's the bad news? He goes, the bad news is you can't walk out on stage until you're at 3% body fat. And I was like, well, okay, let's try that. Like what do I have to do that? So with his help, we started training and oh, by the way, look at this. Before I finish that story, I forgot. We went on safari in Africa. These are just random pictures from our safari. Is that awesome? We saw the coolest things on that safari. We saw a mama lion and her 3 cubs, and she let us sit and watch them play for like 15 minutes. Saw a 5-day-old baby elephant, a bunch of hippos in a pond, giant male kudu, and it was just a leopard. That was my very favorite. We watched that leopard hunt a herd of springbok. It was so cool to watch that. And we jumped off a freaking bridge over the Zambezi River. It was the worst decision I have ever made in my entire life. These kids, they were tying me up and they spoke like 6 words of English. We're in Zambia. Okay, so Victoria Falls comes down in Zimbabwe, it forms a river. The river runs through Zambia called Zambezi River. And we're on a bridge 400 feet above that river. And these kids do bungee jumping. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a good idea. I've never done that. Let's try bungee jumping. It scared I will never do it again. It was really, really scary. They wrapped bath towels around my legs. I'm like, these kids have never heard of OSHA. Yeah. They have never heard of OSHA. There has never been a safety inspection here, and I'm about to jump 400 feet. It was so, I was sure I was going to die. But anyway, there's a little baby lion. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. So I did it. So I worked with my coach and we figured it out. And now I've actually done 4 of these bodybuilding competitions. That's me at 3% body fat. You can do really hard stuff. This was really hard. I did this naturally. I did this without any chemical help, which was a mistake, by the way. Next time I'm gonna maybe get some help. But I did it natural, and it was freaking hard. And I looked at my kids. I was like, "You guys can do hard stuff. You can do hard things. So find your limit, work to your limit, and then go, what's next? How do I work past my limit?" And that's what I learned through that experience. Okay, number 3 point that I want to talk to you about is find an adventure. Find an adventure. Make life an adventure. And I'm not saying this just because he's in the room. The best person I have ever met in my life at doing this is my good friend Abe Shreve. Everything Abe does is an adventure. That guy goes on vacation and he purposely doesn't plan what he does because it's not that it's not that he's lazy, it's that he doesn't want to have a plan because he wants it to be an adventure. And so here's my thing. It doesn't matter if it's small or big or expensive or cheap or time consuming or easy, or it doesn't matter. Find an adventure. Make everything you do an adventure. Go on adventure. And that to me is the single most, and it does not come naturally to me. I'm OCD. Like I'm a little neurotic. I have to, and I remember years ago, Abe and I were like, hey, we should get Teresa and Christy and let's go on a trip together. And Abe's like, I would love it. I got to tell you though, how I travel. And he explained it to me, and my palms started sweating. I'm the guy with like 6 contingency plans for every hour of the day, and I go on a trip or something. And I remember I had like a physiological response to his explanation. I was like, maybe we should just stay friends and wait, and we'll travel together later. But this is not easy for me. Like to do things randomly, willy-nilly, and just to go do an adventure just for the sake of adventure. It's hard for me. It doesn't come naturally, but I have just learned it's what makes life freaking worth it. It is what makes life worth it. It makes business better. And I look for adventure in my business. I look for it in my personal family life. I look for it in my hobbies. It's just all about like, let's go do something a little different or crazy or whatever. And I just want to share with you one example of this from our recent lives. I finished this bodybuilding competition. This one was, it was last year in October. And I finished it. And I had been ignoring my wife for about 2 months while I tried to get from 6% to 3% body fat. And I was at the gym all night and I was grouchy and ornery and hungry and wanted a cookie and I was not a good husband. And so COVID was just kind of, airports were opening and people were traveling a little again. And I said to my wife, hey, why don't you, let's go, after I'm done with this show, let's just go on like a long weekend somewhere easy to get to, somewhere chill. You plan it and let's go and we can connect and we can talk to each other and let's just get out of town for a few days together. And my wife, during the COVID quarantine while we were home, she had started watching this HGTV show called Hometown. Has anybody seen Hometown? It's with Ben and Aaron are the stars of Hometown, and it takes place in a town called Laurel, Mississippi. And they buy homes and they rehab them and they flip them. And she started watching this, and or they just fix them for different families in town. And I started watching it with her. And so we watched all these things. And so I said, hey, plan a trip. And I was thinking, sweet, we're going to go to San Diego. Go kick it on the beach for a few days or whatever. My Delta app shows me there's a notification the next day, and I look at my Delta app and it said something about a ticket to Laurel, Mississippi. And I called my wife and I was like, are you joking? She's like, no, we're going to go to Laurel. I want to see where this show is filmed, and we're going to go meet people from the show. I'm like, we're those guys now? Like, we're going to go stalk these poor people in Laurel, Mississippi? But I owed her, and I was in trouble, and so I was like, I'm doing it. We're going. We're all in. We're going to Laurel, Mississippi. Let's plan every 30 minutes, and so we know exactly what we're doing. Which isn't hard, because there's only like 4 things to do in Laurel, Mississippi. It's a really cute, cool little southern town in Mississippi, and we had days where I would say, I want to go to the gym this morning, and so she'd say, okay. So my wife would drop me off at the gym. We just had one car. We were in a little rental car. She'd drop me off at the gym. And by the way, I went to this gym and I walked in and I said, can I sign up for like a week, or do you have day passes or whatever? And the guy, this is the South. He's like, y'all are here just visited? I'm like, yeah, for the week. And so I'm happy to pay whatever just so I can come work out while I'm down here. Y'all just go on out back there and work out. That's fine. Nice to meet you. And that's how they are. I'm like, well, I'm happy to pay. He's like, nah, I don't want your money. And so my wife would drop me off at the gym. And do you know what she would do? She would go to like one of these cool little historic neighborhoods there, like what we would call the Avenues or Sugar House. We're kind of in your neck of the woods now, but we would go to these little historic neighborhoods. She would get out of her car and just walk down the street and meet people. And she would come back and get me at the gym. She's like, I met the coolest people. I'm like, how did you meet them? I was walking down the street and they were sitting on their front porch. They were drinking sweet tea. And they asked me if I wanted to come sit on the porch with them. And I did. And we talked for an hour and a half. And we're having lunch with them later tonight. And that's just how she is. She's just all about the personal connection. But we spent, 4 or 5 days in Laurel. And we met several people from the show that she had connected with through social media, and everybody was really nice, and we had a really fun time. And the last person that she connected with was a realtor who had been on the show, and the realtor said, hey, I've got a couple hours. I'll pick you all up, and I'll show you around the town. And so we're like, oh, that sounds great. So we're driving around, and she takes us to her favorite neighborhood, and we're driving around, and it's really a cool, these massive southern, trees that they just go on forever, and they just go up and up, and everything's green. It actually rains there. You're seeing the first precipitation we've had here in northern Utah in 3 years? 3.5 years, I think. It's the first time it's rained or snowed. Everything's green. It's really beautiful. And we're driving through, and she's like, there's actually a house for sale right here. You just want to see it? Sure, we'll stop and look at it. So we stop and we look at this house, and we loved it. And we get in the car, and I said, what are they asking for this? Just curious. So she gets on the MLS, and it's an economically repressed area. That's kind of the point of the show, if you haven't seen the show. And if you haven't, you should watch it, by the way. The highest rated TV show in HGTV history. They were pulling 30 million viewers at the end of season 5 last year. It's crazy how popular it is. And then I realized, I'm laying there, I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my wife on this show. And so I got to my computer, I started researching online. I found I found all their information, where the directors were and everything, and I emailed. I just started emailing people, and lo and behold, a couple days later, someone emails back. And they said, hey, will you fill out this thing and send us video and pictures and whatever? And so without telling my poor wife, I did all of this, and I submitted an application, and 2 weeks later, I got a call from one of the producers of the show, and they cast us. Here we are in Laurel, Mississippi. Look, this is us filming. Do you see Ben? There's Ben, the star of the show. And there's Aaron right there. And there we are. There's us with our daughter, who we took down, who filmed with us in the big reveal. This is the crew set up out front. There's my daughter, just in a random picture. So we own a house in Laurel, Mississippi. And I've been nervous about a few things in my life. I have never been more petrified about watching this show. I have no idea what to expect. I thought it was like this cute little quaint little show. I'm like, they have 30 million. I said, I'm about to make an ass out of myself in front of 30 million people. And I'm really nervous about it. But anyway, it's one of these things that made no sense whatsoever. It really made no financial sense. It really made no sense from a time perspective. It made no sense from a bandwidth perspective. There was nothing about this that did anything for, my business or our lives or anything in any other way, other than I just thought, this seems like a really cool adventure to go on with my wife, and I think we should do this. And wherever it takes us, and let's just go. So people have been asking me, my friends and family who know about this, what are you going to do with the house, and what are you doing? And I say, I have no idea. I have no earthly idea what our plans are, other than just it's an adventure, and we're going to ride the adventure train until it's over. So anyway, it's just a thought. It's just an example. But sometimes doing the illogical, sometimes doing the nonsensible, sometimes just doing things that just don't make sense are really what gives life meaning and purpose. And you think about it in your own businesses and in your clients' businesses, and we have all these formulas, right? And we have all these models, and we plug into these formulas, and we plug into those models, and I do that, and that works. But once in a while, I don't know an entrepreneur. I do not know a successful entrepreneur who would not stand up here and in front of you say, at some point, I just had to take a leap. Okay, the next thing I want to talk to you about is Lake Powell. You guys, has anyone ever been to Lake Powell? It's a pretty awesome place, right? I mean, it's one of the most beautiful, incredible places on the face of the earth. Did you know that there is more Lake Powell is 150 miles from south end to the north end, but with a million little canyons that go around and around and around, back and forth in between. Did you know that when you add up all of the coastline of Lake Powell with all of those different channels, there is more coastline at Lake Powell than there is in the entire state of California and Oregon? True story. It is an amazing place. It's massive. I started going there when I was a kid. And so when I had kids, I was like, I really want to carry on that tradition. Here's what I didn't know. Lake Powell is heaven on earth for kids. For adults, it kind of blows. It's a lot of work and a lot of stress and a lot of worry. Okay, for the grown-ups, for the people that have to be in charge. And I didn't know that. Like my parents always took care of that. That was always my dad's problem. I just went and tried not to get too sunburned, right? And screwed around and tried not to kill myself. But we bought a houseboat and we started taking our kids down. And this is just a picture of Lake Powell that I took last year. It's got these red sandstone cliffs everywhere, and it is beautiful. That's my daughter and her friend surfing behind our boat. Isn't that awesome? They're on a surfboard with no rope, and she's on his shoulders, and the wave pushes the board behind the boat. Okay, so. And then this is an example, like you just go find these little canyons and you bury anchors, you set anchor, and then you just live on the houseboat for a week, okay, when we go down there. So here's the thing. My kids love it. We did it for a few years, and I went to my kids and I was like, let me just be honest with you. I like it okay, but I'm like, this is not a vacation for me. This is a lot of work. You are just constantly either driving this houseboat, which is like a giant wind sail, you're driving it trying to think how we're not going to crash or how we're not going to die, or you're tying up ropes to tie it, or you're retying the ropes. So you're loosening the ropes because the water level's going down, or you're tightening the ropes because the water level is going up, or you're fixing the generator because it's clogged and the generator isn't working. So or you're driving the ski boat around all day so your kids can, surf and water ski and wakeboard and do all of their things, and then you're cooking and you're cleaning and then you're worrying, and it's 142 degrees or something Fahrenheit down there all the time. It's hot. And so after a few years, I went to my kids, I said, I have a proposition for you. If you will sanction the idea of selling our houseboat at Lake Powell, I will agree to a 1-week vacation every year until all of you turn 18, anywhere in the world that you all collectively choose. Because for the same amount of money that we're spending to go do this trip, which is wearing me out, we can go anywhere in the world, so you guys can pick a place and we will do a 7 to 10 day trip every year, anywhere in the world. And my, for a second, my kids are like, anywhere? I'm like, anywhere. You pick the place. I look at my daughter, I'm like, Paris? You want to go to Paris? I looked at my son, I was like, Bali? You ever heard of Bali? So I give them the sales pitch, and I was like, this isn't even fair. Like I'm really good at this. And their brains are barely developing. Like I'm gonna get whatever I want out of this. It's not even hard. And so I finished my sales pitch, and all 4 of my kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, from the oldest down to the youngest, they were like, we'd rather go to Lake Powell. We want Lake Powell. I'm like, seriously? You would choose that over Fiji? Yeah, we really like Lake Powell. And so we go to Lake Powell, and we have gone to Lake Powell 2 times a year, every year. I think it was about 15 years ago. And one way or another, we've never missed a trip. We always still manage to go down there, and I make sure my Valium prescriptions are, ready to go, and I take some cleansing breaths, and I suck it up, and I go, and I want to show you why I do it, because you know what I've learned? That for me, the key to my life being fulfilling and worth it and complete is helping other people find their full, complete, happiest lives. And I've realized that if I do that, it actually is accomplishing that same goal with me. And it was partially Lake Powell that taught me that. And I just want to show you. That's why. That's my kids and their cousins. And I look at this picture all the time. That's just on some random evening in Lake Powell in the back of our boat. And have you ever seen a group of kids that look like they're living their best, fullest, most complete, awesome, freaking amazing lives? Look at those kids. I mean, they are, and this is not like you take a picture and a minute later they're all miserable or whatever. Like this encapsulates and captures and encompasses what this experience is to them. And so when I realized that, I said, to hell with it. Like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it because if your lives are good, my life is good. And if I will live my life in a way looking outward, helping other people weather, and you know what? I realized when I learned this with my kids in stupid Lake Powell, which I don't know if this even means anything in the grand scheme of things, I realized that same principle applies in every situation in my life. It applies with my friends. It applies with my clients. If I can help my clients find success, if I can help my clients break through, if I can help my clients live their best business, professional, personal lives, it's helping me do that same thing. And that really changed my whole outlook. It changed my paradigm, and it even changed my big why a little bit, because I realized, like, really, that's what these things are about. Like, I don't need a vacation, go sit in a chair and drink a drink with a little umbrella in it and not have a care in the world. Although, as I described that, it sounds pretty awesome. But I don't think I need that, but this is what I need. This is my why. It's helping them. It's their lives being all of that and not just my life. So I'm grateful for this. This is a picture. I coached my son and all of his buddies. I coached him in 100 different sports. But I played basketball growing up, and so I loved coaching my son and his friends in basketball. I coached them, all my kids in basketball. But this particular son, from the time he was like 4 years old till the time he was maybe 17, 18, I coached him and his buddies. And this one season, this is so cool, but these guys had a friend in their high school, in their school, named Hyatt. And I just want to show you Hyatt right here. That's Hyatt right there. Hyatt had Down syndrome, and these kids were his buddy. They were his friends, and they loved Hyatt, and they said, hey, we want Hyatt. Hyatt wants to play basketball. And so we've invited Hyatt to come play on our basketball team. And I said, let's do it. Like, that's awesome. I am all in. So Hyatt came and played with us this season. And these kids, we were winning a lot of games. They were really good at basketball, some of these kids. And they named their team Da Bucks for some reason. I still have, they would do the dumbest things. Like, they would make me some days they would text me before the game. Hey, Mike, tonight you need to dress in a 3-piece suit, to the game. Like, you need to look like an NBA coach or whatever. And I was just dumb enough, I would follow all of their silly instructions. And so they were always up to some crazy hijinks. But this year they called their team Da Bucks. I still have my Da Bucks jersey. I think I was 00, but I still have my jersey at home. But Hyatt came and played with us this year, and these kids had a goal that they wanted to have one game where they scored 100 points in the game. And you think, well, that's not a big deal, right? You turn on any NBA game, they're scoring 100 points. These games, I think they were like 4 8-minute quarters or something. They are not long games, and you're playing, a bunch of kids, and they're kids, right? They're kids, so they're screwing around, and they wanted to score 100 points. And we got down to, I can't remember honestly if it was the last game of the season or the second to last game of the season, but they hadn't done it. And we were playing a team that wasn't very good, and I talked to the coach before and said, these guys want to try to score 100. If they're, and the coach is like, yeah, we don't care, it's fine. So I just said, just go play. So we played, and we're playing. We get to I think there's a few minutes left in the game. And I don't remember, I think maybe we had 98 or 99 points or something like that. Like, we were right there. And Blaine Bass, who was our best player, this goofy-looking kid, he can ball like you can't believe. He is unreal. But Blaine Bass, who's kind of the captain of the team, he calls a timeout. And we had 99 points, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. He calls a timeout, and he comes over, and we get in the little timeout huddle, and I just look at him like, what do you want to talk about? And he said, I want Hyatt to score our 100th point. And if he doesn't do it, we're not doing it. And I said, okay, now we're talking. And Hyatt was in the game already, but he said he's going to score it. So I said, guys, get the ball, get it to Hyatt. And cute little Hyatt, he's standing there and he goes, okay, coach, what's our play? He doesn't know any of the play. He just kind of runs around, and he's like, what's our play? And I said, we're running the Hyatt special. The Hyatt special. Okay, coach. And I just made that up. There was no Hyatt special. But, okay, coach. And they run out onto the court, and we get the ball, and they run it down, and they pass it to Hyatt, and he shoots, and he misses. The other team gets the ball, and they come down, and then they get the ball and they shoot it. We get the ball back. We take it down. They give it to Hyatt. He shoots and he misses. The other team gets the ball, and I don't remember. There's like 20 seconds left now at this point. I'm like, oh no, no, we're not. And so the Blaine, timeout. And he comes over and he's like, I'm like, what do you want to do? And he goes, we still want Hyatt to make it. We need to get the ball. We need to get the ball. And so they went out. Somebody on our team stole the ball. We get back down. There's like 10 seconds left. They passed it to Hyatt, and he's 30 feet away from the basket. Poor kid didn't know where he was, and he catches it, and he's like, what do I do? What do I do? And we're all yelling, shoot it! Shoot the ball. Hyatt turns around, and he shoots a three-pointer, and drains it and nails it. Look, we got 102 points, and there's my boys there. There's my boys, and there's Hyatt. And the best part about this was that he makes the shot, and the whole gym, the other team especially, went crazy cheering. Like it was like someone had just won the NBA championship. And the other team was cheering, and everybody was cheering, and Hyatt goes over to where all the parents are sitting. He goes over and he puts his fingers like this, and he starts running down the sideline by pointing at the parents, and he goes, in their eye, and he runs all the way down, and then he comes back down the other direction, and he's like, MVP, MVP, and the whole gym is chanting MVP, and Hyatt scored like 6 points the whole season, But he is the MVP, and so there's a billion lessons to be learned from this, but one of them is I just thought life is always best when we don't compare ourselves to others. 6 points to Hyatt was like 66 points to Blaine Bass. It didn't matter. And Hyatt, in his mind, in his brain, was the MVP, right? He had just won the equivalent of the NBA championship. And you know why? Because whatever you believe, the universe or God or cosmic forces had given Hyatt the greatest gift ever, which is the inability to be able to cognitively compare himself to other people. He didn't have that. And so because he didn't have that, in his mind, MVP. Like he's the guy, and I thought about that so many times, and I thought, we are all at our best, living our best lives when we care about what's our potential. What is your client's potential? Don't worry about what your competitor is doing. Don't worry about what Apple is doing. Don't worry about what so-and-so. What is your potential? What's your best? You do your best. You find your potential. You worry about you, and you base your self-worth, self-satisfaction, you base your business goals, your business objectives, you base those not on what anybody else has done or might do or whatever, but you base those on you. And that is the only way to live a satisfied life. It is, in my opinion. Okay, this is my daughter, Sarah. She's 18 now, and Sarah's really cool. She's the head cheerleader at Farmington High School, and she's dresses well, and everybody likes. I spend most of my waking hours trying to make Sarah think I'm cool, just in the spirit of full disclosure. I'm not sure I ever will achieve that, but Sarah really is sort of the paragon of cool. But she's a serious cheerleader, and a few years back, she was on a traveling cheer team. There's Sarah in her cheer. I just mostly put this picture in because don't I look good in that picture? It's less about Sarah here and more about me. I look awesome there, huh? That suit is money. I'm gonna wear that suit. But let me just tell you a quick story about Sarah. She's on a really, really high end, what's called level 5 competition cheer team. And it's as high as you can get in competitive cheer. And this team was traveling all over the Western United States competing in all these tournaments. And their goal was to make it to the National Cheer Finals in Orlando at Disney World, at the Disney World Athletic Resort facility down there. And so they have to get so many points, you have to be invited. Yeah, it's a big process to do this. And so they did it. They competed for 2 years. First year they didn't make it. Second year they made it. They started winning and they were doing really well and they got enough points and they got invited to go back to Orlando. So we all went, and it was an amazing experience because there were teams from all over the country that were there, these cheer teams. And they do this huge preliminary round that takes basically all day, and then they cut the teams down and they cut them down again, and then they announce the finals. And I think there's like 10 teams that make it to the final round, which was on ESPN. So you walk into this room and there's like the color commentators sitting down there, and the broadcasters, the announcers, and they're announcing it, and they're it's on TV, and there's this huge stage and there's this big arena full of people. I'm like, wow, this is really cool that little Sarah. And when she was, I told you I coached all my kids in sports. I remember because I was so dumb. I was so naive and just so myopically minded sometimes. I remember thinking that because Sarah sucked at soccer and basketball, I'm like, she's going to be athletically challenged. Turns out she was by far my most athletic kid and by far the most athletically successful of all of my kids. She is, man, that girl is an athlete. It's just, I didn't know about this type of athletics back then. To me, sports was basketball and football and soccer. So anyway, we go back. The way cheer works is you're given points, okay? And your whole routine is worth X number of points. I can't, big numbers, but X number of points. For every tiny, tiny, tiny little mistake you make, they deduct points. And so at the end, they give you a total, but what you really are looking for is how many deductions did we get. So if a girl drops somebody from a pyramid or from a tower and they drop, it's like -1 point, you're done. And so the competition level is so high that any significant deduction of points and you can't win. Can you imagine that, by the way? Like, you talk about pressure situations. I mean, like in basketball, you're supposed to miss 50 to 60% of the shots you take. Michael Jordan, for his life, shot what, 51% from the field? In baseball, the best hitters, a third of the time, right, that they're gonna hit. Anyway, in this sport, one mistake, you're done. You lose. And imagine now being, 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids dealing with that kind of pressure. And man, I marveled. I was like, they are tough kids. It's really cool. So we go into the finals. We do our routine, and we nail it. And the kids come backstage, all the girls come backstage, they're cheering and they're like, oh my gosh. And we wait, and the judges sent things back to the coach, and the coach comes back and she's like, 0 deductions. 0, a perfect routine. And so these girls were like, we won, like we're going to win. And there were still a few more teams to go or whatever, but all the teams we had watched had at least one tiny little mistake or something, and they're like, we're going to be the national champions. And the other teams go, and then they announce the top 3 teams. We're one of them, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is gonna happen. We're gonna win. And they put the 3 teams, and they announce the 3rd place team. It's us and this team from Georgia, I think, was the other team. And they announced the winner, and it was this team from Georgia. They won. And my poor daughter, my poor little girl just started bawling. All the kids were crying. They lost it. And they're like, we can't believe that we lost. Like, what happened? And so the coaches asked around, and they were like, oh, well, turns out the other team had a 0 deduction routine, and the degree of difficulty on one of their stunts in their routine was 1/8 of a point harder than the degree of difficulty on ours. It's like the difference of, instead of ending like in this position, you end like in this position. Like, that's the difference of 1/8 of a point. And because their degree of difficulty was higher, they won. And these girls were just devastated. They were devastated. And their coach was like, Mike, do you mind saying something to them? Like, me? You know, I don't know. I can't talk to, talking to teenagers, and let alone, girls. I still don't understand women. I don't understand. And so all I could think to say to them was, I just looked at them and I was like, if you dare define success based on what another team did or didn't do. Don't you dare define success that way, because if you do, you will define your entire lives by what other people do or don't do, and you will never maximize your potential. You will never be as happy as you can. It doesn't matter what they did. It matters what you did. And what did you do? You had a perfect routine. You nailed it. You could not have done any better than you did. Sorry, this is my little girl, so I get a little choked up with this. But I said, you nailed it. And I've thought about that so many times, and it's so easy to say and so unbelievably difficult to do. But it is, if we define our success or failure or lack of success based on other people, I'm just telling you, we are doomed to a life of depression, discouragement, and mediocrity. Okay, and so I hope that they learned that. I don't know if they did. I don't know if they probably didn't hear a word I said, but I've tried to follow up, 82 times on that comment with my daughter, and she just gives me the quintessential eye roll every time. But anyway, that's the lesson. Don't compare yourselves. There's Sarah again at her high school. Okay, here's the last one. The last one is try new things. So help me, how many of your clients in business, as you're coaching them through their challenges, you're coaching them through their problems, and you're asking them questions, and you realize they're doing today exactly what they did a year ago, which didn't work, and they're still doing it because they're convinced that it's the right thing to do. Sometimes you just have to say, let's go try something new, try something different. And my coaches who have taught me this over the years and said, Mike, we understand this is why you're doing it. You got to think differently. And Abe helped me with this 2 days ago. Abe was like, Mike, you probably hired the wrong guy, and you got to think about this differently. And man, those things are hard to hear, but it is a life, and business is about being willing to try new things. Just try it. Just try something new, try something different. And I just was looking at my pictures and I was like, do I have any photographic evidence of me just randomly trying new things? And I found a couple. I had never had a full-on facial. And I went past the spa and, I had a meeting cancel. I'm like, I've got an hour. I want to go have a facial because I've never done it. And I did it. And I took the pictures. I had a full-on hour-long facial. I don't know if I'll ever do it again, but I had never had it. I'd never tried it. There's an airline in Ogden that announced like $35 fares from Ogden to Burbank. $35 fares? Let's go try it just because we've never done it. So we flew to Burbank. We went to Universal Studios for a day and flew back home again just because we wanted to try something different. My wife admitted to me 2 years ago, we were talking about something and she's like, do you know that I have never seen a Shakespearean play? And I was like, At your age? Are you kidding me? You gotta be kidding me. She had never seen a Shakespeare. So luckily, one of the best international Shakespearean festivals, one of the best in the world, is in Cedar City, Utah, about a 3.5-hour drive south of here, really close to St. George, Utah. And they have an internationally renowned Shakespeare festival. We bought tickets, and the next day we drove ourselves down to Cedar City, and we went to a Shakespeare play, and we drove back home because she had never seen one. She had never seen one. I was like, we got to go try that. Our kids had never been on a helicopter. So when we were in Hawaii, we prioritized it and said, let's go do a helicopter tour of Hawaii because our kids had never been on a helicopter. My daughter Sarah said when we were on one of our trips, she's like, do you know that I have never actually watched a sunrise? I've never seen, because she's a teenager, so she sleeps early in the morning. To her is 11:30. You know, she's like, I've never seen the sunrise. I'm like, we're gonna go see one. So we woke up the next morning and we drove up to the top of this volcano on Maui. We watched the sunrise, and there it is. Look what she got to see. She'd never seen it before, just because we just wanted to go try something different. My kids had never been to an NFL game. They'd never seen an NFL team play, and so I looked for cheap tickets. I found cheap tickets to LA, and we went to that SoFi Stadium. By the way, that's like a $6 billion stadium. SoFi Stadium in LA. It's unbelievable. Okay, Spencer had never been to a school dance and never been on a date. And he didn't want to go. He's shy. This is my youngest. This is my 15-year-old son, Spence. And he's shy. I don't know why. The kid is perfect, but he is really shy. And so they had this themed, he had to dress like, I think he was supposed to dress like he was in the 60s or something, but it was this themed school dance. And I was like, Spence, you know why you should go? Because you've never been to one. That's why you should go. You should just go see what it is. So my daughter, Sarah, who's in high school with him, took this picture of Spencer at this dance and was like, I think Spencer is adjusting pretty well to the high school dance scene. And so when he got home, he hadn't seen the picture. I showed him the picture. I'm like, do you see what I'm saying? This is why we try new things, Spence. So there's Spence at his very first school dance. And you can see he's kind of, I think, enjoying it. Looks like he is, at least. I'm just going to say one other thing. Any discussion about a good, meaningful life without just mentioning one word, and that's just love, okay? And I'm just, the older I get, the more I am just convinced it's the single thing that really matters. If we just default everything we do to love, we just need to love each other a little bit better and love our families and our friends and our neighbors. And I look around sometimes, I watch people fight on Facebook and on Twitter, and I watch people interact with each other, and I watch them, they discuss the issues of the day with so much anger and vitriol and hate, and I can't stand it. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me, and I'm a fighter, okay? By my trade, I'm a fighter. In my bones, I'm a fighter. And I just think if there is a silver bullet out there to the world's problems, to society's problems, to our nation's problems, to our community's problems, to our families' challenges, and to our business challenges, it just comes down to love. We just love our people, love our jobs, love everything, and if we can just find it in us to just love a little bit deeper. I'm not saying we have to agree. I'm not saying we have to choose to spend time with everybody we meet. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we're not gonna disagree with people and that we can't see the world differently. We're supposed to, and we should, and that's all great. And occasionally we're gonna have arguments, and I get all of that. But if we just love each other, we just have got to love each other. And I hope that as you're coaching your clients, you remind them of that. Do you love it? Do you love your job? Do you love the people you work with? Do you love your partners? Do you love your clients? If not, can I suggest you ought to think about resetting? And I just think if we can get that one thing down, man, our world is going to be just a way better place. Okay, and that's the message I'll leave you with. So with that, thanks, Abe, for having me. Sorry to take
No, stop it. I won't hear it.